We're in Acts chapter 27. We talked about the first couple of verses, actually just the first verse last time, when it was decided that we would sail for Italy. Paul and some other prisoners were handed over to a centurion named Julius, who belonged to the imperial regiment. We, again, it's a we section, right? Luke was personally present on this. We boarded a ship from Adramyttium. Say that 3 times fast. About to sail for ports along the coast of the province of Asia. What you got to remember is the province of Asia, we would call that the Middle East, right? So we're talking about modern day Turkey, that I don't know what to call it, the crescent, Mediterranean crescent. Okay, the ports along the coast of the province of Asia, and we put out to sea, meaning, we bumped up around that crescent, and then we put out to sea. We don't realize how dangerous and risky the ocean travel was. Now, it's one thing to take a boat and kind of follow the coast around. It's a whole other thing to put out to sea in the Mediterranean. You look at the map and the Mediterranean and say, well, that's not very big. You know what? You get out in the middle of the Mediterranean, it's big. It's bigger than you probably realize. Boats and the technology for building and sailing was still pretty primitive in Paul's day. There were one of the aspects of the sea was that it was considered, in terms of the cultural perception, the sea was a place of mystery and danger. Well, and there's a reason for that, because people died, and not just a few, at sea. We're not just talking about every once in a while. We're talking about a more than expected, from our perspective, number of people who died while traveling out at sea. All right. Aristarchus, a Macedonian from Thessalonica, was with us. Now, I don't know why Luke included that, unless, when this is my opinion, when Luke identifies so many specific places and people, he is providing spots or dinks, whatever you want to call them, of verification. And I'm reading into this, reading between the lines, but it's almost like Luke is saying, hey, you can ask Aristarchus, who is a Macedonian from Thessalonica, about all this, because he was with us. The second thing is, possibly, Aristarchus may have been a follower of Jesus and part of Paul's entourage. And Luke, this is awful to say, maybe he was throwing him a bone, including him in this documentary that he writes for Theophilus. Anyway, verse 3, the next day we landed at Sidon, and Julius, in kindness to Paul, allowed him to go to his friends so they might provide for his needs. I think Julius was of a outstanding character, and I personally feel that Julius had a way better compassion than most centurions. Frankly, most centurions were battle-hardened. Okay, they lived in a world of violence and suffering, and they tended to not be this fully compassionate person. Well, there was a centurion who, a couple of other times, centurions popped up in the narrative of the New Testament. One was a centurion sent word to Jesus asking him to heal a servant. He seemed to not be this cruel, taskmaster, take the next hill kind of guy. A second one was Cornelius. In the book of Acts, remember, Peter was sent by the Holy Spirit to Cornelius, who had been he was so highly respected by the Jewish community because he had been kind to the Jewish community and helped fund the construction of the synagogue there. Well, okay, now here, Julius is a guy cut out of that bolt of cloth. In kindness to Paul, he allowed him to go to his friends so they might provide for his needs. Now, there are there's so many questions I have that I don't know how to answer, and even if I had these questions, they wouldn't make much difference to the impact of the narrative. But did Julius have such confidence in Paul that he said, "Go ahead, go, man, find your friends"? Or was Paul? See, I don't think Paul was chained or bound on this boat. Just my opinion, because I think if he had been, Luke would have said so. But I wonder if maybe Julius sent guards with him, but I think that would have been included. The second thing is, Paul had friends in Sidon. See, the gospel went out in almost like when you throw a big rock into a pond and the ripples go out from where it splashed in. That's how the gospel, you know what, it still does. It goes out in that fashion. And Paul had thrown a lot of rocks into that pond, right? And his circle of influence and his circle of friends was probably, I think it's safe to say, it was larger than any of the other followers of Jesus in that day. In fact, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find, other than, I'm not necessarily throwing a rock, but other than televangelists and people with religious empires today, and I'm not even sure they had the impact that Paul did. Okay, whatever. And why Julius let him go was so that his friends could provide for his needs. I'll say it again. In this time, and I mean, it wasn't like, this was unique. This was the practice and remained the practice for many centuries after century one. But in century one, prisoners had to take care of their own stuff, right? If they were going to be fed and clothed, it came from the outside, which gives me more data to work with when I think about Paul in prison. When he was in prison, not so much prison as jail in Caesarea, right, for 2 years, his friends had to take care of his needs. Now, and in this situation, so I get this is my opinion, that these friends of Paul's in Sidon brought sufficient provision. I don't know that he needed more clothing, but definitely would have needed more food. And so not only did they feed him while he visited, but they sent provision back with him to the boat. Verse 4, from there we put out to sea again, and passed to the lee of Cyprus because the winds were against us. There's a lot of geography in this part of Luke's narrative. And in fact, almost the entire narrative of what we have as the book of Acts is very geographically connected. I mean, so if you've got a study Bible or a Bible with maps, it's probably got a map of Paul's missionary journeys. And you can follow this. I'm not a big geography guy, but when you think about what had to take place, what the journey, what the voyage would have been for Paul to get from Caesarea to Rome, you didn't just go across the Mediterranean Sea to the boot of Italy. It was all wind-powered or oar-powered travel on the sea at this time. And if the winds were not favorable, that puts you in a position where you had to wait until they were. And if they were against you, then that's what happened here. They put out to sea again and passed to the lee of Cyprus because the winds were against us. They had to make what would have maybe been a detour. When we had sailed across the open sea off the coast of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we landed at Myra in Lycia. You can look it up. There the centurion found an Alexandrian ship sailing for Italy and put us on board. All right. An Alexandrian ship. Alexandria is in Egypt. So it had come across the Mediterranean to Lycia. And the centurion, Julius doesn't get much airtime, but I think what little we know about him sets him up as a couple of things. Number one, he was I think, compassionate. I think he was a fair person. I don't think his status had gone to his head. I mean, you can talk about that for a long time. He was also a problem solver. You didn't make reservations on a boat in that day. You didn't make reservations for your trip from Caesarea to Rome. You found a boat. You went as far as you could that direction on that boat, and then you found another boat. And if you needed to, you would find another. Julius was a problem solver. Found an Alexandrian ship for Italy and put us on board. Again, us. Luke continued with them. Verse 7, we made slow headway for many days and had difficulty arriving off Cnidus. I'm so tempted to go on a big long thing about we made slow headway. I think all of us have had seasons in our life where it felt like and looked like we were making slow headway. Debbie and I, as I'm recording this, are packing our goods to move from Edmond, Oklahoma to Las Vegas, where we lived for 13 years, and we love Las Vegas. We're moving back. Holy smokes. You're getting almost 49 years of marriage packed up. We're making slow headway. I'm reminding myself virtually every day, slow headway is headway. Maybe if you needed that word, there you go. Slow headway is headway. We'll come back to this next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.